You probably think the most advanced machine in human history is being built in a sterile laboratory. You know the type. White floors, guys in hazmat suits, silence so deep you can hear a pin drop. Well, you'd be wrong. Dead wrong. The rocket that's going to take us to Mars? It's being welded together in a swamp in South Texas, sometimes in a tent, often in the dust. It looks less like a high-tech aerospace facility and more like a construction site for a very tall, very angry water tower. It's ironic, isn't it? The future of our species is being hammered out in a place that didn't even have reliable running water until recently. But that brings us to the big questions. Why is the world's most powerful rocket being built like a backyard DIY project? How do you turn a cheap roll of steel into a skyscraper that catches itself? And is this chaotic tent city actually the secret weapon that beats NASA and Boeing? Welcome to Starbase. Let's take a look under the hood. It starts with the metal. Not carbon fiber, not some exotic unpronounceable alloy, just steel. Specifically, 304L stainless steel. It comes in massive cold-rolled coils, looking heavy and dull. You might find the same stuff in your kitchen appliances. But here's the thing about this steel. It loves the cold. Cryogenic temperatures, the kind you find in deep space or inside a fuel tank filled with liquid oxygen, make this steel stronger, not brittle. Plus, it's cheap. And when you're trying to build a fleet of 1,000 ships to colonize Mars, the price tag matters. In the early days, you would see these coils sitting out in the yard, just sitting there. It felt crude. But that's the vibe here. It's raw, it's aggressive, it's like a heavyweight boxer training in a gritty, old-school gym instead of a fancy fitness club. They take these coils, unroll them, and flatten them out. Then they cut them and roll them into giant cylinders. We call them rings. Each ring is 9 meters wide. That's about 30 feet. Stand next to one and you feel tiny. These rings are the ribs of the beast, and once you have the ribs, you need to join them. You need to forge the spine. This is where the magic and the violence happens. Back when they started, the welding was rough. If you looked at the early prototypes like Starhopper or SN1, they looked like crinkled tinfoil. The welds were lumpy. It was all done by hand or with basic tools, and frankly, it showed. But SpaceX operates on a philosophy that sports fans will recognize immediately. You practice how you play, and you fix your mistakes on the fly. They call it fail fast, learn faster. They moved from manual welding to automated machines. Now they use high-powered lasers. Laser welding. It sounds like sci-fi, but it's just practical speed. It's cleaner, it's faster, it reduces the heat distortion that warps the metal. Now, when you look at the rings on a modern ship, the seams are almost invisible. They're hunting for a mirror finish. This work used to happen inside giant white tents. Tents! Why? Because building a factory takes years, but pitching a tent takes weeks. Elon Musk didn't want to wait for permits and architects. He wanted to build rockets now. So they built the factory around the rockets. But things are changing. The tents are coming down. Rising in their place is the Star Factory. This is a massive permanent building designed for one thing: speed. They're aiming to churn out one spaceship every single day. Think about that stats line for a second. One ship a day. That's a production cadence that makes the rest of the aerospace industry look like they're moving in slow motion. Inside the bays, buildings so tall they have their own weather, robots stack these rings vertically. It's a vertical assembly line. The high bay and mega bay dominate the skyline. They stack the fuel tanks, liquid oxygen on top, methane on the bottom. Separating them is a common bulkhead, a steel dome that has to take insane pressure without popping. And then comes the nose cone. It's shaped from steel sheets and welded into that classic sci-fi point. This isn't just for aerodynamics, this is where the payload lives, or the people. But the most distinct feature? The tiles. Look at the belly of the ship. It's covered in thousands of black hexagons. These are ceramic heat shield tiles. They're like dinner plates, brittle, fragile, but they're the only thing standing between the ship and burning up like a meteor when it comes back to Earth. Attaching them is a nightmare. The steel ship shrinks when it gets cold from the fuel and expands when it gets hot from re-entry. The tiles have to ride that moving surface without cracking or falling off. It's like trying to tile a floor that's constantly changing size. They're constantly tweaking the pins and the gaps, trying to find the perfect fit. A shell is nothing without a heart, and the beast has a heart made of fire. Enter the Raptor. These engines are built at a separate facility in McGregor, then trucked down here to be installed. But once they arrive, they're the stars of the show. The Raptor uses methane and liquid oxygen. It's a full-flow staged combustion engine. That's technical speak, for it burns everything efficient as hell. It squeezes every ounce of energy out of that fuel. In the old days, rocket engines were a mess of pipes and wires. You couldn't even see the engine bell through the spaghetti. But look at the new Raptors. They're sleek, clean. They have melted down the bolted flanges and welded parts together to eliminate weak points. They install them in a swarm. The super heavy booster, the bottom half of the stack, has 33 of these things. 33 engines. When you look up into the business end of the booster, it looks like the inside of a chaotic beehive. But there's a method to this madness. The outer ring of engines is fixed. The inner ones can gimbal. They swivel to steer the rocket. The power output is just stupid. We're talking over 16 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. That's double the Saturn V that took us to the moon. It's enough power to move a mountain, or in this case, a skyscraper full of fuel. So you have the rings welded, the tanks stacked, the tiles pinned, the engines mounted. Now the doors of the mega base slide open. It's time. They roll the rocket out on a massive transporter. It moves slowly, inching down Highway 4 toward the launch site. Seeing it on the road is surreal. It's a silver obelisk moving past sand dunes and marshland. It towers over everything, 400 feet tall when fully stacked. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty. It arrives on the pad, and this is where the factory extends to the launch site itself. You don't use a crane to just lift it, they use the tower. They call it Mechazilla. It's a launch tower with chopstick arms. These arms reach out, grab the ship, and lift it onto the booster. It looks like a giant robot playing with a toy. But the craziest part? These arms are designed to catch the rocket when it comes back. You heard that right. You don't need to land on legs anymore. Legs are heavy. They're dead weight. So Musk decided to delete the legs and just catch the booster in mid-air with the tower arms. It sounds like madness. It sounds like something a kid would draw in a notebook, but they're actually doing it. The goal here is rapid reusability. Land, refuel, launch again, like an airplane. If they can pull this off, the cost of going to space drops from hundreds of millions to maybe a few million. Fully stacked, it waits on the pad, the frost line creeping down the side as they load the super-chilled propellant. This factory, this dust, these tents, it isn't just about building a rocket, it's about building a fleet. Musk says he needs 1,000 of these ships to colonize Mars. He wants 3 flights a day. That's why the factory looks the way it does. That's why they're obsessed with welding speeds and steel coils. They aren't building a museum piece, they're building a production line for the solar system. Every weld, every tile, every engine test is a rep in the gym. They fail, they blow stuff up, they learn, and they go again. It's the most aggressive engineering campaign in history. We used to look up at the stars and wonder if we could go there. Now, in a dusty corner of Texas, they're bending steel to make sure we do. This is the gateway to Mars, but getting there is only half the battle. Surviving there, that's a whole different game. If you think building the rocket is hard, wait till you see what happens when you actually land on the red planet. It's not the vacation you think it is. Click here to watch why anyone who goes to Mars will never come back to Earth. You need to see this before you book your ticket. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.